You're flowing with spirit, then suddenly, silence. But what if it's not God pulling back? What if it's fear pretending to be divine? You were in it, that moment where your prayers felt electric, where every breath carried clarity, where alignment didn't feel like a task. It felt like your natural state. You were finally resting in flow, the kind that can't be faked, the kind that doesn't come from a checklist, but from your cells recognizing the truth of who you are. And then it happens. A thought, a doubt, a memory, a voice. It doesn't shout. It suggests, subtle, holy sounding. But the message underneath it is always the same. Maybe this won't last. Maybe I should pull back. Maybe this is too much too soon. Maybe I should protect myself, just in case. And just like that, you're no longer in the river. You're watching it from the edge. Still wanting it, still believing in it, but no longer inside it. This is how fear hijacks flow, not by showing up as panic, but by disguising itself as wisdom. Fear rarely knocks down the front door. It slips in through the cracks of your discernment. It wears the tone of responsibility, the disguise of realism, and the false humility of waiting on confirmation. But let's be clear, God's voice never partners with fear. It may convict, but it never constricts. It may stretch you, but it never shames you. It may pause you, but it never paralyzes you. So when flow suddenly disappears, don't rush to assume you've lost your faith. Ask a better question. What part of me felt unsafe in the expansion? What agreement did fear make behind the scenes? When did I stop feeling worthy of this ease? You see, staying in quantum flow isn't about striving harder. It's about recognizing what pulled you out. Because the shift doesn't get weaker. You just stepped out of its field. And most often, it's not sin that did it. It's subtle self-protection disguised as strategy. But here's the invitation. Before you try to reset, before you dive into more affirmations, before you question your alignment again, pause. Return to stillness. Let the Holy Spirit point out what tried to parent your power. Because if fear is speaking louder than faith, then fear is leading your frequency. And until that changes, no affirmation will stabilize what your nervous system keeps rejecting. This is not failure. This is your next initiation. Welcome to the deeper layers of flow, where clarity doesn't mean comfort, where stability doesn't mean silence, where alignment means staying seated in truth even when the old patterns try to rise. Alignment doesn't always feel good, but neither does surgery. And sometimes, both are needed for healing. We've been conditioned to believe that alignment should feel euphoric, like you're floating in divine confirmation, like the angels are nodding in agreement with every choice, like flow should always come with peace, ease, and open doors. But what if I told you, alignment isn't about what you feel, it's about what you return to when everything else is screaming. It's easy to feel aligned when everything is going right. When clients are signing, your phone is buzzing, the money is flowing, and your body feels energized. But that's not alignment. That's momentum. Alignment is what you choose when the evidence disappears. It's how you breathe when fear knocks. It's how you move when doubt whispers. It's how you speak when silence answers your prayer. It's how you stand when no one claps for your breakthrough. Alignment is not about perfect thoughts. It's about choosing truth when your emotions are loud and familiar. It's when you hear the same thought from your past self, and this time, you don't agree with it. It's when anxiety wants to drive, but you say, you can come, but you don't get the wheel. It's when your nervous system trembles, but your spirit doesn't flinch. Because you've chosen who the driver is. See, flow isn't a current you catch once and hope to maintain. It's a posture you return to 100 times a day. With breath, with surrender, with remembering what already belongs to you. Alignment is remembering. Even if I don't feel it, I'm still chosen. Even if I don't see it, I'm still safe. Even if it doesn't move, I'm still in motion with God. Even if it hurts, I haven't failed. I'm being formed. Because here's the truth. If your version of alignment only works when life feels good, you're not aligned. You're addicted to results. And that's not flow. That's a feedback loop. Real alignment happens when you no longer need a sign to stay seated in faith. It happens when you stop outsourcing your stability to circumstances. You stop asking, "How do I stay aligned?" and start declaring, "I return now. I return again. I return always." Because alignment is less about remaining and more about how quickly you return when you drift. You didn't lose the flow. You lost the frequency that could feel it, and that changes everything. Let's correct a lie that the ego loves to whisper. You're disconnected. You've fallen off. You lost the alignment, but you didn't. The divine doesn't unplug from you. It doesn't withdraw to punish or test. It doesn't leave the room when you feel afraid. It stays, always. But fear clouds your reception. It changes the filter you're perceiving truth through. Not because truth moved, but because you tuned in to a lower frequency. It's like blaming the radio station for bad music when you're the one who turned the dial. Your spirit is always in union. The holy field never cuts connection. But your mind can create static when it agrees with distortion. Here's what this means in practical terms. When fear takes over, your body tightens. When shame creeps in, your breath shortens. When unworthiness whispers, your chest closes. These aren't just emotional responses. Their frequency drops. The flow didn't leave. You shifted into a version of yourself who couldn't feel it anymore. But that shift is reversible. And it doesn't take a 21-day reset or 3-hour ritual. It takes a moment of awareness, a pause, a remembering, a decision to retune. I'm not disconnected. I'm distracted. I'm not off track. I'm off center. I didn't fall. I froze. I don't need to rebuild. I need to resettle. This is the mercy of divine alignment. You never actually left the flow. You just forgot how to feel its rhythm. The moment you stop striving to find it again, and instead breathe as if it's still present, you realign. Because the kingdom is not somewhere you arrive. It's something you remember. And the moment you do, you're back in it. Not because it changed, but because you changed your agreement. You didn't lose the flow. You simply tuned out of your true self. And the invitation now is simple. Tune back in. Not because you failed, but because grace is still broadcasting, even when you weren't listening. Fear doesn't need to be loud to lead. It only needs your silent agreement. And most of us have signed more than we realize. Fear is rarely the villain in your story. It's the negotiator. The voice that offers safety at the cost of your surrender. It doesn't scream. It reasons. And here's how it sounds. Let's not dream that big. It's not realistic. Maybe you should wait for confirmation. Isn't that too risky right now? What if this isn't what God really wants for you? These questions sound spiritual. They wear the robes of discernment. But behind them is a silent contract. I'll give up my authority if you promise to protect me from disappointment. That's what fear offers. false comfort in exchange for divine inheritance. But here's the problem. Every time you agree with fear, you step into a lesser timeline. Not because God withheld anything, but because you chose a reality your nervous system could handle. You lowered the vision to meet your emotional capacity. Let me say it clearly. Fear doesn't stop you. Agreement does. You can feel fear and still flow. You can doubt and still decide. You can shake and still shift. But when you agree with fear, when you align with its logic, you step out of the quantum realm of faith and into the closed circuit of survival. And that's the real disconnect. So how do we break it? We start with renunciation. I break agreement with the belief that I must shrink to stay safe. I release the lie that flow must feel easy to be real. I revoke permission. I gave fear to parent my steps. I cancel the contract that comfort is my compass. This isn't just spiritual talk. It's energetic detachment. It's what restores your frequency to the realm where God is still speaking, and you're finally listening. Because truth doesn't chase. It waits for recognition. And in every moment of realignment, there's a divine silence that echoes. I never left you. I never stopped flowing. You just stopped agreeing with me. Done. And that's the invitation now. Not to silence fear, but to stop following it. Not to fight your feelings, but to stop letting them write your theology. Not to deny your fear, but to deny its right to define your future. You were never meant to push into alignment. Flow doesn't come through force. It comes through yielded power. So many of us try to get back into flow, the same way we try to fix everything else in life. Through pressure, through performance, through productivity, we journal more. We script affirmations harder. We visualize better. We hustle our way into stillness, which is a contradiction the soul never asked for. But listen closely. You don't return to the flow by doing more. You return by being less resistant to what already is. The frequency of flow isn't earned. It's tuned into. Like a radio wave that never stopped broadcasting while you were twisting the dial too hard. And that tuning doesn't come from noise. It comes from inner yielding. Yielding is not passivity. It's voluntary agreement with what heaven is already doing. It's not saying, I give up. It's saying, I agree again. That's why most people miss the realignment moment. They're expecting a loud crash of glory. But God often whispers through quiet, cellular yeses. A yes from your body, relaxing the shoulders you didn't realize were tensed. A yes from your breath. Inhaling like peace is still real. A yes from your memory, choosing to reframe the pain without losing the wisdom. A yes from your faith, agreeing with what's possible even before it's proven. Realignment is not always a miracle moment. Sometimes it's just choosing not to panic. Sometimes it's not reaching for anything at all. Sometimes it's just sitting in the knowing that flow has never depended on your ability to maintain it. Because God doesn't require perfection to pour. You don't have to be high vibe all day. You don't have to crush every limiting belief before noon. You just have to stop exalting your feelings over your faith. That's the secret. Flow is not the absence of chaos. It's the peace you return to in the middle of it. And it was never gone. It was only quiet, waiting for you to stop performing long enough to feel it again. So today your only job is this. Exhale, agree, and return. You didn't break the shift. You broke the illusion that it depended on you, and that's what made it unshakable. Let's clear something up once and for all. You can't ruin what God started. Your fear didn't disqualify you. Your hesitation didn't void the alignment. Your doubt didn't dissolve the flow. It may have clouded your awareness, but it never revoked your access. Because this shift you're in, it didn't begin with your effort. It began with God's invitation, and that invitation was never fragile. We treat spiritual alignment like glass, careful not to drop it, afraid to mess it up, terrified it'll disappear if we're not vigilant enough. But flow isn't glass. It's breath. You don't hold it. You return to it again and again and again. The only thing that ever made you feel far from alignment was the lie that you had to earn your place in it. But the kingdom of God is not a reward for performance. It's a realm you step into every time you remember, I was chosen before I was capable. I was called before I was certain. I was worthy before I was ready. That's all. So no, your shift is not fragile. Your breakthrough is not hanging by a thread. Your alignment is not some high frequency you're barely holding on to. It is a home frequency. It is where your soul already knows the sound of heaven. And every time you pause, every time you breathe, every time you stop panicking and start remembering, you re-enter it, not because you fought your way back, but because you said yes again. This is your truth now. You don't have to beg to flow. You don't have to prove to be aligned. You don't have to win the battle to return to peace. You just have to remember, you never stopped being chosen. And the moment you remember that, you're not just in alignment, you're in authority, and fear can't argue with that.